The morning light filtered through the dense canopy of the whispering woods, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. The air was rich with the scent of moss and damp earth, and the gentle rustling of leaves played a soft melody. Nimue, a slender figure with wild, chestnut hair tied back in a loose braid, moved through the trees with the grace of a deer. Her feet barely made a sound as she navigated the underbrush, a well-practiced routine she had honed through countless hours of exploration and training. Each day began the same way, with the sun rising and the woods waking. Today, however, was special. Today, she would practice her magic in the sacred glade, a secluded spot known only to a few. It was here that she felt most connected to the ancient spirits of the forest, those who whispered secrets only to those who listened. Nimue arrived at the glade, her heart racing with anticipation. The area was encircled by towering oaks, their gnarled roots twisting above the ground like ancient serpents. In the center stood a smooth stone altar, adorned with wildflowers and feathers left by the forest's inhabitants. She took a deep breath, centering herself as she approached the altar. With a flick of her wrist, she summoned her staff, a slender piece of ash wood, topped with a crystal that shimmered in the morning light. It was a gift from her grandmother, a powerful sorceress who had taught her the ways of magic. Nimue closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and began to chant softly, drawing upon the energy that surrounded her. As she practiced her incantations, the air thickened with power. Colors swirled around her, forming ethereal shapes and patterns that danced in the sunlight. She felt a familiar warmth surge through her, a reminder of the magic that flowed in her veins. Each flicker of energy was a connection to the world around her, a bond with the trees, the animals, and the very essence of nature itself. But as she delved deeper into her training, a sudden chill swept through the glade. The wind whispered in a language she couldn't understand, and a shiver ran down her spine. It was as if the forest was trying to tell her something important. Nimue opened her eyes and glanced around, the vibrant colors fading into shadows. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through her bones. She felt compelled to listen. Closing her eyes again, she concentrated on the sound, allowing it to envelop her. Suddenly, a vision struck her. She saw herself standing at the edge of a vast sea, waves crashing against jagged rocks. A figure loomed before her, tall and regal, with hair as golden as sunlight. Though she could not see his face clearly, she felt an unmistakable connection. It was a boy, young yet destined for greatness. Find the sword, a voice echoed in her mind, deep and resonant. It holds the key to your fate and his. The vision shifted, revealing shadows looming in the distance, dark figures cloaked in malice. She gasped, and the world around her came crashing back. Nimue stumbled back, her heart racing. She opened her eyes wide, staring into the vibrant green of the glade, but the warmth of the sun had dimmed, replaced by an uneasy twilight. What was that? She whispered, breathless. The prophecy felt heavy, as if it carried the weight of worlds. She instinctively clutched her staff tighter, grounding herself against the unknown. In that moment, she understood, her training had merely been preparation. The journey ahead would demand more than she had ever imagined. Magic was not just about conjuring light or bending the elements, it was about facing destiny, embracing the unknown, and standing against the darkness that threatened to engulf not only her but the boy she had yet to meet, Arthur, with newfound determination, Nimue turned to leave the glade, the whispers of the forest now a call to action. She would seek the sword, and in doing so, uncover the truth of her own fate and the destiny intertwined with Arthur's. The woods no longer felt simply like home, they were a beginning, a crossroads where her path would intertwine with magic and adventure. Nimue hurried back through the whispering woods, her heart racing with the weight of the prophecy. The air felt charged, as if the forest itself was aware of her urgency. As she approached her village, a sense of foreboding settled over her. The once lively atmosphere of the village now felt eerily silent, the usual sounds of laughter and chatter replaced by an unsettling hush. When she entered the village square, her worst fears materialized. Flames licked the thatched roofs of several homes, smoke curling into the sky like dark fingers reaching for the clouds. Villagers scurried about, their faces etched with panic and fear. Shouts echoed in the air, mingling with the crackling of fire. Nimue's breath caught in her throat as she rushed toward the nearest house, the home of her closest friend, Eloan. The door was ajar, and through the smoke, she could see Eloan's mother attempting to douse the flames with a bucket of water, her movements frantic and desperate. "Stay back." Eloan's voice rang out as she emerged, wild-eyed and covered in soot. "They're attacking us, Nimue. We have to go." Nimue felt a surge of adrenaline. "Who? What's happening?" "Raiders, dark men on horses. They came from the north, and they're taking everything." Eloan cried, fear tightening her voice. Nimue's heart raced as she surveyed the chaos. She could feel the magic within her stirring, urging her to act. "We need to protect the village. Gather everyone at the center. I can help." Before Eloan could respond, a shadow swept across the square, and a group of armored raiders rode into view, their faces obscured by grimy helmets. They laughed, their voices carrying over the crackle of the flames as they plundered the remaining stalls. Nimue felt a surge of anger, mixed with fear. She had trained for this moment, but nothing could prepare her for the sight of her home being ravaged. "We can't let them take our village," she shouted, brandishing her staff. "Wait." Eloan grabbed her arm. "We need to be smart about this. We can't take them all on." Nimue's gaze narrowed as she focused on the leader of the raiders, a tall figure with an imposing presence. In that moment, as their eyes locked, a flash of recognition jolted through her. This was not just an attack, it was a turning point. Suddenly, the air around her shimmered, and the world fell away. A vision enveloped her, pulling her from the chaos. She saw Arthur again, standing on the rocky shore she had glimpsed before. His expression was resolute, determination radiating from him like a beacon. But now, there was an urgency in his eyes, as if he could feel her call across the distance. "Find me, Nimue," he urged, his voice echoing in her mind. "You must find the sword before it's too late." The vision faded as quickly as it came, and Nimue stumbled back, breathless. The flames roared louder, and the laughter of the raiders rang in her ears like a taunt. She had to act, and she had to act now. "Gather the villagers," she called out, her voice rising above the din. "We need to stand together." Eloan nodded, and they rushed to rally the villagers. Nimue's heart raced, but she felt the magic within her ignite with purpose. If she could distract the raiders, perhaps they could buy enough time for everyone to escape. Nimue took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. She stepped forward, raising her staff high. "By the spirits of the woods, I command you," she declared, drawing upon her training. The air thickened with energy, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The raiders turned, surprised by her sudden display of power. Nimue focused on the leader, channeling her energy into a spell meant to create a barrier, a wall of shimmering light to shield her village from their onslaught. That a brilliant flash erupted from her staff, a wave of energy surging forward. The light formed a protective shield, forcing the raiders to halt in their tracks, confusion crossing their faces. "Now!" Nimue shouted to the villagers. "Run! Get to the woods!" As the villagers began to flee, a roar of anger erupted from the leader of the raiders. He charged toward her, raising his weapon, but Nimue stood firm, her heart pounding with resolve. She would not let her village fall, she would not let darkness prevail. In that moment, the prophecy surged through her mind again, reminding her of her quest. The ancient sword was out there, and she needed to find it, not just for herself but for Arthur and all those who depended on her. With one final burst of magic, she pushed the barrier outward, sending a shockwave through the raiders. They stumbled back, and in that moment of chaos, she seized the opportunity. "Go," she urged Aloan, her voice filled with urgency. "We'll meet again. I promise." As the villagers escaped into the woods, Nimue felt the weight of her choice. This was only the beginning. She had answered the call to adventure, and now, she would seek the ancient sword that would change everything. Determined, she turned away from the chaos of her village, setting her sights on the path ahead. Arthur's voice echoed in her mind, and she knew that she was destined to find him, and together, they would face whatever darkness awaited them. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon as Nimue emerged from the whispering woods, her heart still pounding from the attack on her village. She had barely managed to gather her belongings, a few essential supplies, her staff, and a small, enchanted pendant given to her by her grandmother. The air was crisp and filled with the sense of damp earth and morning dew, but it felt different now, charged with purpose and determination. Nimue took a deep breath, centering herself. She could not afford to dwell on the loss of her village or the fate of her people. Her path lay ahead, and the ancient sword was calling to her. With each step, the memories of her training flowed through her, a steady reminder of her potential. As she ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew taller and denser, their branches intertwining like the fingers of giants. Shadows danced on the ground, and the sounds of rustling leaves whispered secrets in a language she felt she was only beginning to understand. A few hours into her journey, the path began to narrow, and the air grew thick with magic. Suddenly, Nimue heard a soft, melodic sound, unlike anything she had ever encountered. Curiosity pulled her toward the source, and she pushed through a thicket of underbrush. There, in a small clearing, stood a shimmering pool of water, illuminated by the light filtering through the trees. At its edge danced a group of ethereal figures, water sprites, their skin glistening like silver in the sunlight. They twirled and spun, their laughter ringing like chimes in the air. Nimue's eyes widened in awe. She had only heard tales of water sprites, mischievous creatures of the forest known for their playful tricks. She stepped closer, enchanted by their beauty. "Hello," she called softly, unsure if they could understand her point. One of the sprites turned, her luminous blue eyes meeting Nimue's. "A seeker approaches," she sang, her voice melodious. "What brings you to our sacred waters, young sorceress?" "I'm on a quest to find the ancient sword," Nimue replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I seek to protect my home and uncover my destiny." The sprites exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. "The sword you seek lies in the heart of danger," the first sprite warned. "To reach it, you must pass through trials that test your spirit and strength. Will you brave the challenges ahead?" Nimue straightened her posture, feeling a surge of resolve. "I will face any challenge to reclaim my birthright and protect those I love." With a ripple of laughter, the sprites began to swirl around her, their forms blending into the air. "Very well, brave one. To pass, you must answer our riddle." "Listen closely," the sprite recited the riddle, her voice echoing through the clearing. "In silence I speak, in shadows I dwell, a guardian of secrets, I weave my spell. What am I?" Nimue pondered the words, the urgency of her quest momentarily fading as she let her thoughts wander. "Silence, shadows, secrets," she mused. Then, it struck her. "You are the night." The sprites erupted in laughter, their joy echoing in the clearing. "Correct. You possess wisdom beyond your years. The path ahead is now clear." With a wave of their hands, the sprites transformed the pool's surface into a shimmering portal. "Step through, and your journey will continue. But beware, the next realm holds both wonders and perils." Nimue nodded, grateful for their guidance. "Thank you. I will not forget your kindness." She stepped into the portal, feeling a rush of energy envelop her. The world around her blurred, and in an instant, she found herself standing in a different realm. This new land was vibrant and lush, filled with exotic flora and fauna. Towering flowers stretched toward the sky, their colors more vivid than she had ever seen. As she took in the beauty, a sudden rustling in the bushes caught her attention. Before she could react, a creature burst forth, a magnificent griffin, its golden feathers glistening like sunlight. It regarded her with piercing emerald eyes, a mix of curiosity and caution. "Who dares to enter my domain?" the griffin demanded, its voice a low growl. "I am Nimue, a sorceress on a quest to find the ancient sword," she replied, summoning her courage. "I mean no harm." The griffin tilted its head, as if weighing her words. "Many have sought the sword, but few return. What makes you different, young sorceress?" "I carry the weight of my home on my shoulders," Nimue said, her voice steady. "I will not falter. I seek to protect those I love." The griffin studied her, and for a moment, the forest fell silent. Finally, it nodded. "Very well, Nimue. You may pass, but first, you must prove your worth. I challenge you to a test of skill." "What must I do?" she asked, excitement tinged with anxiety. "Face me in a flight of wits," the griffin replied, "for the mind is as important as strength." Solve my riddle, and I will grant you passage. Fail, and you will remain in this realm forever. Nimue swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the challenge. I accept your challenge. The griffin's eyes gleamed as it recited its riddle. I can be cracked, made, told, and played. What am I? Nimue furrowed her brow, her mind racing. After a moment, clarity struck. A joke. The griffin let out a roar of approval, its wings flaring wide. You are indeed clever, Nimue. You have earned my respect and the right to continue on your journey. With a graceful sweep of its wing, the griffin gestured toward a narrow path leading deeper into the woods. Follow this path, and you shall find what you seek. But remember, challenges will follow you like shadows. Keep your heart true and your mind sharp. Nimue thanked the griffin, her spirit buoyed by the trials she had already faced. She set off along the path, her resolve unwavering. The journey ahead was unknown, but she felt a growing connection to her destiny, and to Arthur, the boy whose fate intertwined with hers. As she ventured further into the vibrant realm, she knew that with each step, she was one step closer to uncovering the truth of her quest and the power that awaited her. The world felt alive around her, filled with magic, danger, and the promise of adventure. The path wound deeper into the vibrant realm, and Nimue felt the pulse of magic in the air, invigorating her spirit. Sunlight streamed through the trees, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the forest floor. As she walked, her heart raced with anticipation. She could sense that something significant awaited her. After a time, she emerged into a sunlit clearing, the beauty of the landscape momentarily taking her breath away. Wildflowers carpeted the ground, their colors dancing in the gentle breeze. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone, covered in ancient runes that glowed faintly in the light. Nimue approached cautiously, her fingers brushing against the warm surface of the stone. Just as she began to examine the markings, a sound interrupted her, a rustling in the nearby bushes. She turned sharply, her instincts on high alert, ready to summon her magic. Out of the underbrush stepped a young boy, his hair tousled and eyes wide with surprise. He wore simple clothing, a tunic and trousers that were slightly worn but sturdy, and he had an air of determination about him. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice strong despite his youth. Nimue's heart raced. "I am Nimue, a sorceress on a quest for the ancient sword." "And you are?" "I'm Arthur," he replied, straightening up. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," she retorted, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. "This is a sacred place." Arthur stepped forward, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Sacred? And what makes you think you're the only one allowed here?" "I've been exploring these woods for ages." Nimue frowned. "You don't understand. This sword is meant to protect my village. If you're here to cause trouble, me?" Arthur scoffed, crossing his arms. "I'm not the one wandering around in the woods talking to stones." The tension crackled between them, each young heart feeling the weight of their respective quests. Nimue clenched her jaw, unwilling to back down. "This is serious. The fate of my people hangs in the balance." Arthur paused, his expression shifting. Your people. What do you mean? Are you from the village near the Whispering Woods? Nimue's eyes narrowed. Yes. They were attacked by raiders. I need to find the sword before it's too late. Raiders? Arthur's demeanor softened, concern flickering across his face. I saw smoke in the distance. I didn't know it was your village. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the stone behind Nimue glowed brighter. Startled, she turned back to the runes. What's happening? She asked, her voice tinged with fear. I don't know, Arthur replied, stepping closer. Maybe it's reacting to your magic. Nimue nodded, focusing on the stone as it began to hum. The runes pulsed in rhythm, casting intricate shadows on the ground. She sensed that this moment was pivotal. The stone held ancient knowledge that could guide them both, together, she said, glancing at Arthur. If we touch the stone, it may reveal something to us. Arthur hesitated, but something in Nimue's gaze sparked a sense of trust. He reached out, and together, they placed their hands on the warm surface of the stone that in an instant, a vision enveloped them, swirling with colors and shapes. They found themselves standing on the rocky shore that had appeared in Nimue's earlier vision. The waves crashed violently against the cliffs, and in the distance, shadows loomed, figures draped in darkness. Is that? Arthur began, but before he could finish, the scene shifted. They saw a magnificent sword embedded in the rock, shimmering with an otherworldly light. It's beautiful, Nimue breathed, her heart racing at the sight. Wait, Arthur said, eyes narrowing as he focused. That's not just a sword. It's the sword of legend, isn't it? Yes, Nimue replied, realization dawning. It holds immense power, but it also comes with great responsibility. Just then, the vision shifted again, revealing an ominous figure standing before the sword, a dark crown perched on their head. The figure raised their arms, and a wave of darkness surged toward the sword, threatening to engulf it. Nimue gasped, pulling her hand back as the vision faded. We must stop that from happening. The sword is more than a weapon, it's a symbol of hope. Arthur withdrew his hand, his face a mixture of determination and fear. But we can't do this alone. If there's a dark force trying to claim the sword, we need to prepare. Nimue nodded, the earlier tension between them dissipating as they recognized their shared purpose. We'll need to work together, then. This is a quest for both of us. A newfound bond formed in that moment, built on a shared understanding of their destinies. So, we're partners? Arthur asked, a hint of a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. Partners, Nimue confirmed, feeling the warmth of hope swell within her. But we need to hurry. If the vision is true, we don't have much time. As they turned to leave the clearing, a sense of urgency filled the air. The trials ahead would be formidable, but together, they would face whatever challenges awaited them. Nimue could feel the weight of destiny pulling them forward, and with Arthur by her side, she felt ready to embrace the adventure that lay ahead. As Nimue and Arthur ventured deeper into the woods, the vibrant landscape began to shift, the lush colors giving way to shadows and gnarled trees. The air was thick with tension, and Nimue could feel the presence of something lurking just beyond their sight. tell me more about yourself, Arthur," Nimue said, breaking the silence. "You seem familiar with these woods. What brought you here?" Arthur hesitated, his expression clouding with uncertainty. "I come from a village near the coast. My father is a fisherman. I've always felt restless, though, like I was meant for something greater. I've heard tales of knights and adventures, and I wanted to see if they were true." Nimue studied him, sensing both ambition and vulnerability in his words. "But that's not why you're here now, is it? What's really going on?" Arthur took a deep breath, his gaze focused on the path ahead. "I wanted to prove myself. To be more than just a fisherman's son. I dreamed of being a knight, fighting for a cause. But when I saw the smoke, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." Nimue felt a pang of empathy for him. "We all have dreams that push us forward. I want to protect my home and my people, and finding the sword is the key. But it sounds like you're searching for something too." "I guess I am," he admitted, a flicker of hope lighting his eyes. "But it's hard to know what that something is when I feel so small in a world filled with shadows." Nimue nodded, her heart swelling with understanding. "We all feel small at times, Arthur. But together, we can become something more. I can sense the power we can unleash if we join forces." Arthur stopped in his tracks, turning to face her fully. "You really think we can do this? That we can find the sword and protect your village?" "I do," Nimue replied, confidence resonating in her voice. "But we'll need to be prepared. This journey won't be easy, and there will be those who will try to stop us." Just as she spoke, a rustling sound echoed through the trees, and both of them tensed, instincts kicking in. Out of the underbrush stepped a figure, cloaked in shadows, their features obscured by a dark hood. The figure paused, sizing them up with an intensity that sent a chill down Nimue's spine. "Who goes there?" the figure demanded, their voice low and gravelly. Nimue stepped forward, her staff at the ready. "We mean no harm. We are travelers seeking the ancient sword." The figure chuckled, a sound that sent shivers through the air. "Travelers, you say? Many have come seeking that sword, and most have not returned. Tell me, what makes you think you will succeed?" Arthur exchanged a worried glance with Nimue. "We're not just anyone. We have a purpose, and we're prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead." "Brave words," the figure replied, stepping closer, revealing a scarred face and piercing eyes. "But bravery alone will not save you from the darkness that stirs in these woods. There are forces at play, and not all of them will reveal themselves at first." "What do you know about the sword?" Nimue asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know that it is a beacon for those who seek power, and it can corrupt even the purest of hearts," the figure said, his gaze locking onto Nimue's. "It will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Arthur stepped forward, determination etched on his face. "We're not afraid of tests. We'll face whatever challenges come our way. We're willing to fight for what's right." The figure tilted his head, studying them both. "Very well. If you are so certain of your resolve, perhaps you'll need an ally more than you think. I can offer guidance, but I also seek something in return." Nimue felt a flicker of unease. "What do you want?" "I seek knowledge of the sword's true nature," the figure replied, his tone grave. "In exchange for my help, you will promise to uncover its secrets and share them with me. There are those who would use the sword for darkness, and I wish to stop them." "Who are you?" Arthur asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "I am called Kalen," the figure said, the shadows shifting around him. "A guardian of sorts, tasked with watching over these woods. I have seen many come and go, and I know the perils that await you." Nimue exchanged another glance with Arthur, uncertainty swirling in her mind. "Can we trust you, Kalen? How do we know you're not one of those who would use the sword for your own gain?" Kalen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the shadows seemed to deepen around him. "Trust is earned, not given freely. I understand your hesitance. But if you truly wish to protect your home and reclaim the sword, then my knowledge could prove invaluable. Together, we can uncover the truth about the sword and thwart those who seek to corrupt it. You will need allies, and I can guide you through the dark paths ahead." Nimue took a moment to consider, her instincts at war. But as she glanced at Arthur, she saw the same determination reflected in his eyes. They had both faced challenges alone, but this was a fight that required more than just courage. "Okay, Kalen," she said, her voice steady. "We'll accept your help, but know this: if we sense any betrayal, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves." Kalen nodded, an inscrutable expression crossing his face. "Fair enough. Follow me, and I will lead you to a place where you can gather your strength and plan your next move." As they followed Kalen through the dense trees, a mix of anticipation and uncertainty swirled in Nimue's heart. They had made an ally, but the darkness that loomed ahead felt heavier than ever. Would they be able to trust Kalen's guidance? And what other enemies lay in wait? In that moment, they were no longer just a sorceress and a boy, they were a team, united in their purpose. As they moved forward, the weight of their respective dreams intertwined, and together they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them on their quest for the ancient sword. The path through the forest grew denser as Kalen led Nimue and Arthur deeper into the enchanted realm. The air was thick with the scent of earth and moss, and the sounds of distant creatures echoed in the distance. With every step, Nimue felt the weight of their mission pressing on her shoulders, but there was also a spark of excitement, a thrill that came from venturing into the unknown with Arthur by her side. "Keep your wits about you," Kalen warned, his voice low and steady. "The trials ahead will test not only your strength but also your hearts. Trust in each other, and you will prevail." As they continued, the path opened into a wide glade filled with shimmering mist. At its center stood an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with runes that glowed softly. Around the altar, a circle of vibrant flowers swayed as if in response to an unseen rhythm. "What is this place?" Nimue asked, her curiosity piqued. "This is the altar of trials," Kalen explained. "To proceed on your quest, you must face the trials set forth by the magic of this land. Only by proving your worth will the way be revealed." Arthur stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "What kind of trials?" Kalen gestured to the altar. "The first trial will challenge your resolve, your beliefs, and your bond with each other. You must each confront a vision that will test the very core of who you are. Prepare yourselves. Before Nimue could respond, the runes on the altar flared to life, illuminating the glade in brilliant colors. The mist thickened, swirling around them like a living entity, and in an instant, she felt a pull, a powerful force drawing her toward the altar. "Arthur," she called out, but her voice was swallowed by the mist that as the world around her shifted, Nimue found herself standing in a vast, empty landscape. The ground was barren, the sky a swirling mass of dark clouds. In the distance, she saw a figure approaching, a younger version of herself, standing beside her mother. "Mom." Nimue whispered, confusion and longing flooding her heart. She rushed forward, the vision becoming clearer with each step. Her mother's face was filled with warmth, yet an underlying sadness lingered in her eyes. "You've always been so brave, my dear," her mother said, voice soft yet echoing with weight. "But bravery isn't enough. You must also learn to let go." "What do you mean?" Nimue asked, her heart pounding. "I can't let go. I have to protect our village." As she spoke, the scene shifted. The village was ablaze, shadows moving through the smoke, and she could hear the cries of her people. The vision twisted into a nightmare, a reflection of her deepest fears. "No. I have to save them," she screamed. Suddenly, her mother reached out, her hand warm against Nimue's. "You cannot save everyone alone. Trust in those who fight by your side. You must open your heart to love and friendship, or you will be consumed by despair." Nimue's breath caught in her throat. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her, and she realized she couldn't face this alone. With a surge of determination, she turned to her mother. "I understand. I will fight for them, but I will also trust my allies." As the vision faded, the mist swirled once more, and she found herself back in the glade, breathless. Arthur stood nearby, looking equally shaken. "Nimue, what just happened?" "I faced a vision of my fears," she replied, her heart racing. "It showed me how important it is to trust others." Before Arthur could respond, the altar pulsed again, and the mist shifted, enveloping them both once more. When the mist cleared, they stood in a lush meadow, a stark contrast to the previous vision. Wildflowers bloomed everywhere, and the sun shone brightly overhead. However, in the center of the meadow stood a monstrous creature, a dragon, its scales glistening like emeralds, with eyes that burned with intensity. "Who dares to enter my domain?" the dragon roared, its voice rumbling like thunder. "Great dragon," Arthur stepped forward, bravery igniting in his chest. "We seek to prove our worth and continue our quest." The dragon regarded him with a fierce gaze. "Then you must face the second trial. I will test your bond, only if your hearts are true can you proceed." With a flick of its tail, the dragon conjured a storm of wind, sending both Nimue and Arthur tumbling backward. As they landed, they found themselves back in the barren landscape, but this time, they stood facing each other, the dragon looming nearby. "Listen carefully," the dragon intoned. "You must express your deepest fears to each other. Only by sharing your vulnerabilities can you strengthen your bond." Nimue felt her heart race, the weight of the challenge settling heavily upon her. She glanced at Arthur, who was watching her intently, determination etched on his face. I fear that I won't be able to save my village, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. That I will fail everyone I care about. Arthur's expression softened. I fear that I'm not enough, that I won't live up to the hero I want to be. What if I'm just a boy playing at being a knight? As they spoke, the dragon's eyes glimmered, and the barren landscape began to shift, vibrant flowers blooming around them, filling the air with their sweet scent. We must trust in each other, Nimue continued, feeling a warmth spreading through her heart. We both have our doubts, but we're stronger together. Arthur nodded, stepping closer. You're right. I've always wanted to be brave, but I see now that bravery isn't just about fighting. It's about having faith in those around you. The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken feelings. In that instant, amidst the trials, a new understanding blossomed. They weren't just allies, they were friends, maybe even something more. With a powerful roar, the dragon shifted its form, becoming a majestic being of light. You have passed the second trial. Your bond has grown strong, and now you may continue on your journey. As the dragon faded into the sunlight, Nimue and Arthur found themselves back at the altar, the air shimmering with magic. They exchanged glances, a shared sense of triumph sparking between them. Did we really do that? Arthur asked, his voice filled with awe. We did, Nimue replied, her heart racing. I didn't expect to face those fears, but I'm glad we did. Arthur smiled, a light in his eyes that made her heart flutter. Me too. I think we're ready for whatever comes next. With their friendship deepening, they stood together, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. They had begun to forge a bond that transcended mere companionship, one built on trust, vulnerability, and a growing connection that promised to carry them through the darkness of their quest. As they prepared to take the next step on their journey, the path ahead shimmered with hope, and together, they moved forward into the unknown, ready to confront the trials that awaited them. The air around the altar hummed with residual magic, a palpable energy that made Nimue's skin tingle. She felt a sense of renewal after facing the trials, but alongside that exhilaration was a lingering weight on her heart, a secret she had kept hidden for far too long. As they stepped away from the altar, Arthur glanced at her, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. Nimue, are you all right? You seem a little distant. I'm fine, she replied quickly, but the words felt hollow. They both knew she was grappling with something deeper. Hey, Arthur said gently, we've just faced a lot together. If there's something on your mind, you can tell me. I want to understand. Nimue paused, weighing her thoughts. She had spent years hiding the truth about her lineage, fearing the judgment that might come with it. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their friendship, she felt the urge to share. There's something I need to tell you, something about my family. Arthur nodded, encouraging her. You can trust me. Taking a deep breath, Nimue began. I am not just a sorceress. My mother was a powerful witch from an ancient line, and my father, she hesitated, her voice wavering. My father was a king from a distant land. My lineage carries a weight that I've struggled to embrace. Arthur's brow furrowed in surprise. A king? That's incredible. But why keep it a secret? Nimue looked away, the weight of her past pressing heavily on her chest. Because I feared it would change how people see me. I didn't want to be judged for my heritage or have others expect more from me than I could give. I wanted to forge my own path. Is that why you've been so driven to protect your village? He asked, his eyes searching hers. To prove yourself? Exactly, she admitted. I wanted to show everyone that I'm not just my lineage. I want to be known for my own actions and choices. Arthur absorbed her words, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. But if you're descended from a line of kings, that means you have power within you, more than most people can imagine. Why not embrace it? Nimue shook her head. With great power comes great responsibility. I'm afraid of what might happen if I can't control it. What if I hurt someone? What if I become the very thing I'm trying to fight against? Arthur stepped closer, a look of earnestness in his eyes. You're not alone, Nimue. I'm here. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You have a good heart. That matters more than bloodlines. His words warmed her, dispelling some of the shadows in her heart. Thank you, Arthur. It means more than you know. As they walked through the glade, the sunlight filtering through the leaves above, Nimue sensed that their bond was strengthening, forged in the fires of their trials. But she also saw the flicker of doubt in Arthur's eyes, a reflection of the struggles he faced within himself. What about you? Nimue asked, breaking the comfortable silence. You mentioned wanting to be a knight. But what does that mean for you, really? Do you feel like you have to prove something too? Arthur's expression darkened slightly, the weight of his own struggles surfacing. Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck between two worlds. I want to be brave and do something meaningful, but I also don't want to disappoint my father. He has his own expectations of me, and I'm not sure I can live up to them. What does he expect? Nimue asked, her curiosity piqued. He wants me to take over the family fishing business, Arthur replied, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. But I want more than that. I want to explore, to fight for something greater than myself. I want to protect people like you protect your village. Nimue sensed his turmoil, the push and pull of duty against desire. You're not just a fisherman's son, Arthur. You have the heart of a warrior. If you feel that calling, then you have to follow it. But what if I fail? He said, his voice barely above a whisper. What if I'm not brave enough? Bravery isn't about never being afraid, it's about facing your fears despite them, Nimue replied, her own heart echoing with the truth of her words. You've already shown bravery by standing with me, by facing those trials. You can't let fear define your path. Arthur met her gaze, a spark of determination igniting in his eyes. You're right. I need to embrace who I am, even if it doesn't fit what others expect. Just like you. Nimue smiled, feeling the bond between them strengthen further. And if we stumble, we'll help each other back up. As they walked side by side, the shadows that had loomed over their hearts began to dissipate, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. They were not just fighting for their individual dreams anymore, they were fighting for each other. Ahead, the path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the forest. With every step, they felt the weight of their respective identities settling into place, and as they prepared for whatever trials awaited them, they knew they would face them together, two souls bound by friendship and a shared quest, ready to uncover their true destinies. As Nimue and Arthur ventured deeper into the forest, a thick fog rolled in, shrouding the path ahead in an eerie silence. The air grew heavy, and an unsettling chill wrapped around them, making the hair on the back of Nimue's neck stand on end. It was as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for something dark to unfold. "Do you feel that?" Arthur whispered, glancing around nervously. "It's like the air has changed." Nimue nodded, a sense of foreboding settling in her chest. "We should stay alert. Something isn't right." Just then, the fog parted to reveal a small clearing. At its center stood a tall, menacing figure cloaked in shadows, their features obscured by a dark hood. The figure's presence sent a shiver down Nimue's spine, as if the very essence of darkness surrounded them. "Ah, the little sorceress and the wannabe knight," the figure drawled, a voice smooth yet laced with malice. "How delightful it is to find you here, lost and vulnerable." "Who are you?" Nimue demanded, stepping protectively in front of Arthur. "What do you want?" The figure chuckled, a chilling sound that echoed through the clearing. "I am known as Morwenna, a seeker of power. The ancient sword you so desperately seek is the key to dominion over all. And I intend to claim it for myself." Arthur's fists clenched at his sides, anger igniting within him. "You won't succeed. We'll stop you." Morwenna's laughter filled the air, mocking and cruel. "You think you can stop me? You're nothing but children playing at heroics. I've harnessed powers that you can scarcely comprehend." As she spoke, the shadows around her coalesced, forming dark tendrils that writhed like serpents. The air crackled with dark magic, and Nimue could feel its malevolence seeping into her very bones. "Run!" she shouted to Arthur, adrenaline surging through her veins. They turned to flee, but Morwenna raised her hands, unleashing a wave of dark energy that surged toward them. Nimue quickly summoned her magic, conjuring a barrier of shimmering light just in time. The dark energy collided with her shield, causing a shockwave that nearly knocked them off their feet. "Keep going," Nimue urged, struggling to maintain her concentration as the shadows pressed against her barrier. "We need to get to the trees." They darted through the clearing, narrowly avoiding the tendrils that lashed out like angry vipers. Nimue felt a pang of fear grip her heart. Morwenna's power was palpable, and for a moment, she feared they wouldn't escape, but as they reached the edge of the clearing, Nimue focused on the magic flowing through her, pushing the barrier outward with all her strength. The shadows recoiled, giving them the precious moments they needed. "Quickly," she yelled, grabbing Arthur's hand. They plunged into the dense forest, weaving through the trees as they ran. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind them, Morwenna's voice calling out in fury, "Flee all you want, little sorceress. The darkness will find you." Nimue's heart raced as they navigated through the thick foliage, the weight of fear mingling with urgency. "We have to get to a safe place. Over there." Arthur pointed to a narrow path hidden by underbrush. They veered toward it, the world around them blurring as they sprinted forward. The path led to a small ravine, its steep walls lined with moss and ferns. Without hesitation, they leaped down, landing softly on the forest floor below. They pressed against the cool earth, catching their breath as the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. What just happened? Arthur gasped, his chest heaving. Who was that woman? Morwenna, Nimue replied, her voice shaking slightly. She's a dark sorceress who seeks the ancient sword. Her powers are unlike anything I've ever faced. What do we do now? Arthur asked, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. She knows we're after the sword. She could follow us. Nimue took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. We have to move quickly and find shelter. We can't let her find us, or the sword will be lost to darkness. They climbed out of the ravine, their senses heightened as they began to weave through the trees again. The shadows felt thicker now, as if they carried Morwenna's malice within them. As they navigated through the underbrush, Nimue's thoughts raced. How could they possibly stand against someone so powerful? But deep within her, she felt the spark of determination igniting once more. She had faced her fears, and now they had to face this new threat together. They came upon a small cave, its entrance partially concealed by a curtain of vines. In here, Nimue urged, pulling Arthur inside just as a rustle sounded nearby. They crouched in the darkness, hearts pounding as they listened. The sounds of the forest faded into silence, replaced by the distant echo of footsteps. Nimue pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the thrum of magic within her. We can't stay here for long, Arthur whispered, his voice barely audible. What if she finds us? Nimue nodded, trying to quell the rising panic. We'll wait for a moment. If she's still searching the area, we need to find a way to divert her attention. As they crouched in the shadows, Nimue's mind raced with possibilities. She thought of her lineage, the power coursing through her veins, and the strength of their bond. They would find a way to outsmart Morwenna. What if we create a diversion? Arthur suggested quietly. If we can draw her away, we might have a chance to escape. That could work, Nimue replied, a plan beginning to form in her mind. If I can summon a small burst of magic to create a distraction, it might buy us enough time to slip away. Are you sure you can do it? Arthur asked, concern flickering in his eyes. Nimue met his gaze, determination flooding her heart. I have to try. For us, and for the sword. They waited in silence, adrenaline coursing through them as Nimue gathered her thoughts and energy. This was their chance to prove their strength, not just to each other, but to themselves. Taking a deep breath, she focused on her magic, letting it swirl around her like a gentle breeze. With a whispered incantation, she conjured a small burst of light and sound, sending it crackling into the distance, toward the edge of the clearing where they had first encountered Morwenna. Now, she urged, grabbing Arthur's hand. Together, they slipped out of the cave and into the shadows, hearts racing as they made their way down the hidden path. As they ran, the distant sounds of the distraction echoed through the trees. They could hear Morwenna's enraged voice, shouting in frustration as she turned her attention toward the light. Fools, she screeched, and they could feel the dark energy swirling around her as she searched for the source of the commotion. with renewed determination, Nimue and Arthur pressed forward, hearts racing as they navigated the thick underbrush. They had escaped the immediate danger, but they knew Morwenna wouldn't give up easily. "Stay close," Nimue urged, a sense of urgency guiding their steps. "We have to find shelter and regroup. There's still much to do, and we can't let her catch up to us." As they dashed deeper into the forest, shadows danced around them, but they were no longer just fleeing. They were united in purpose, ready to face whatever darkness awaited them, and determined to uncover the sword's secrets before it fell into the wrong hands. As dawn broke, the forest began to stir with life, the sunlight filtering through the leaves and casting dappled patterns on the ground. Nimue and Arthur moved cautiously, navigating the underbrush as they sought a safe haven. After what felt like hours of searching, they stumbled upon a clearing that took their breath away. Before them stood the ancient temple, its weathered stones entwined with vines and moss, as if nature had embraced it over the centuries. Towering columns adorned with intricate carvings depicted scenes of valor, magic, and ancient battles. It was a sight that whispered of forgotten legends and lost powers. "There it is," Nimue breathed, awestruck. "The Temple of the Ancients, the place where the sword is said to be hidden." Arthur stepped forward, eyes wide with wonder. "It's incredible. But it also looks like it hasn't been touched in ages. Do you think it's safe?" Nimue's heart raced with excitement and apprehension. "We won't know until we explore it. But we have to be careful. Morwenna will be looking for us, and we can't let her find this place." They approached the temple's grand entrance, a massive stone doorway etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with magic. As they reached for the heavy door, it creaked open with a deep rumble, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and age-old secrets. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. The walls were lined with faded murals, telling tales of heroes and their quests, their eyes seemingly watching as they entered. "Where do we start?" Arthur asked, glancing around the vast chamber. "According to legend, the sword is hidden deep within the temple," Nimue replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But to reach it, we must prove our worth. There will be puzzles and trials along the way." As they ventured deeper into the temple, they found a series of corridors branching off in different directions. Each corridor was adorned with more intricate carvings, but one stood out. The symbols glowed softly, resonating with the magic that pulsed in Nimue's veins. "This one feels right," she said, leading Arthur down the glowing corridor. "Let's see where it leads." They followed the path until they reached a large chamber, the walls lined with ancient tablets and an enormous stone pedestal at its center. On the pedestal sat a glowing orb, its light pulsing rhythmically, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What is that?" Arthur asked, taking a cautious step closer. "It looks like a focus for magic," Nimue said, reaching out tentatively. "But it may also be part of the first trial." As she touched the orb, it flared brightly, illuminating the chamber. A deep voice echoed through the space, resonating with authority. "To prove your worth and claim what you seek, answer the riddles of the ancients. Only then shall the path be revealed." Nimue and Arthur exchanged nervous glances. "Riddles?" Arthur muttered, uncertainty clouding his features, the voice continued, "Answer correctly, and the way shall open. Answer wrongly, and you will remain trapped here, lost to time." The chamber fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. Nimue steeled herself, focusing on the orb. "We can do this," she whispered to Arthur. "Together." The orb pulsed again, and the voice spoke once more. "First riddle, I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" Nimue closed her eyes, her mind racing. "I've heard this before, it's an echo." "An echo," Arthur repeated, nodding in agreement. The orb brightened, and the voice boomed, "Correct. You have proven your wisdom. The next riddle awaits. The more of this there is, the less you see." "What is it?" Nimue thought hard, the answer eluding her. But then it struck her, a flash of clarity. "Darkness," she exclaimed, "darkness." Arthur echoed, relief washing over him. The orb flared brightly once again, signaling their success. "Well done. Now for the final riddle. I have keys but open no locks. I have space but no room. You can enter, but you can't go outside. What am I?" Nimue's heart raced as she contemplated the riddle. "A keyboard," she ventured, unsure. "Wait," Arthur said, his eyes lighting up. "No, it's a piano. It has keys, but it doesn't unlock anything." "Right. A piano." Nimue agreed, confidence surging through her. "That's it." The orb erupted in a brilliant light, illuminating the chamber in a warm glow. "You have answered correctly. The path to the sword is revealed." With a rumble, a hidden door at the back of the chamber slid open, revealing a dark passageway beyond. A sense of accomplishment surged within Nimue, but so did a renewed sense of caution. "Let's be careful," she cautioned, glancing at Arthur. "Morwenna may not be far behind." Together, they entered the passageway, its walls lined with glowing runes that pulsed in time with their heartbeat. The air grew warmer as they descended deeper into the temple, the anticipation of their goal mingling with the tension of the unknown. As they ventured forth, they arrived at another chamber, this one much larger, adorned with ancient statues of warriors and guardians, all facing a central altar. Atop the altar lay the legendary sword, its blade shimmering with an ethereal light, the very embodiment of power and magic. "Look at that," Arthur breathed, awe evident in his voice. "It's beautiful." Nimue stepped forward, heart racing. "This is it. The Sword of Legends." But as she approached, a low growl echoed through the chamber, reverberating off the stone walls. From the shadows emerged dark figures, twisted, shadowy forms that lurked, ready to protect the sword from intruders. "Prepare yourself," Nimue shouted, raising her hands as energy crackled around her. "We need to fight our way to the sword." Arthur drew his dagger, determination etched on his face. "We'll do this together." As the shadows lunged toward them, Nimue and Arthur stood back to back, their resolve solidifying in the face of darkness. This was their moment, not just to claim the sword, but to prove that they could face the trials together, united against the forces that threatened to tear them apart. With a fierce cry, they charged into battle, ready to confront the shadowy guardians that stood between them and their destiny. As the shadowy figures lunged at Nimue and Arthur, the air crackled with tension and anticipation. Nimue summoned her magic, feeling it surge through her veins, a brilliant light contrasting sharply against the encroaching darkness. "Now," she cried, sending a burst of energy toward the nearest shadow. It recoiled, momentarily stunned by the force of her magic. Arthur, with swift reflexes, darted forward, striking with his dagger, the blade glinting in the dim light. The battle was fierce, the guardians shifting and swarming like phantoms. Each time Nimue unleashed her magic, the shadows writhed, their forms flickering in and out of existence. She and Arthur fought valiantly, working in unison, each movement choreographed by the bond they had forged through their trials. But just as they began to gain the upper hand, the shadows coalesced, forming a massive figure that towered above them. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and it let out a roar that echoed through the chamber, shaking the very stones. "I am the guardian of the sword," it bellowed, its voice resonating with power. "Only those with true courage and resolve may claim its power. You must prove yourselves worthy." Nimue and Arthur stepped back, their hearts pounding. The guardian's presence was overwhelming, a force of nature that radiated authority and ancient wisdom. "What do we have to do?" Nimue asked, her voice steadied despite her fear. "Face me," the guardian commanded, raising its hand. The shadows receded, revealing a circle marked on the ground, swirling with intricate symbols. "Within this circle, you must confront your greatest fears. Only then will the sword reveal its true power." Nimue exchanged a worried glance with Arthur. "What if we can't face our fears?" she whispered. "We have to try," he replied, determination sparking in his eyes. "We've come too far to turn back now." Taking a deep breath, they stepped into the circle together, its magic enveloping them in a shimmering light. The guardian's voice echoed around them, growing softer but no less powerful. "Prepare yourselves. The trial begins." In an instant, the world around them shifted, and they found themselves standing in an empty void, a swirling mist obscuring their vision. Nimue felt a cold dread settle in her stomach, as though the darkness had seeped into her very soul. Suddenly, shadows took form, morphing into visions that pierced her heart. She saw her village, engulfed in flames, her loved ones screaming as dark forces overran their home. She felt the weight of failure, the loss of everything she held dear. "No," she cried out, shaking her head, trying to dispel the nightmare. "This isn't real." But the visions grew more vivid. She saw herself standing alone, powerless against Morwenna's dark magic, her friends falling one by one. The weight of expectation bore down on her, suffocating and relentless. "Fight it, Nimue," she heard Arthur's voice echo from the mist, urging her to stand strong. Gathering her resolve, she closed her eyes, focusing on the magic within her. "I am more than my fears," she declared, the words ringing true in her heart. "I will not be defined by darkness." With that affirmation, the visions began to waver and fade, dissolving like mist under the sun. She opened her eyes, the void around her dissipating, replaced by the familiar shadows of the temple chamber. But the trial was not over. Beside her, Arthur faced his own demons. He stood in a barren landscape, surrounded by crumbling ruins, the remnants of his home. In the distance, he could hear the whispers of doubt, the voices of those who had told him he would never be a true knight. Arthur, the shadows taunted, their voices dripping with scorn. "You're nothing but a fisherman's son. You'll never be a hero." Panic clawed at his heart, but he could hear Nimue's voice urging him on, reminding him of their bond. "I'm not just my past," he shouted into the void. "I have the heart of a warrior. I choose my own destiny." With those words, the shadows around him began to unravel, the weight of expectation lifting as he took a step forward, embracing the truth of his own courage. As the void faded, the two friends found themselves standing side by side again, their faces reflecting the determination that had emerged from the depths of their trials. "You did it," Nimue said, her eyes shining with pride. "We faced them together." The guardian reappeared, its presence as imposing as before, but now it bore a look of respect. "You have faced your fears and emerged stronger. You have proven your courage and resolve. The sword shall now reveal itself to you." With a wave of its hand, the guardian gestured toward the altar. The air shimmered, and the sword began to rise from its resting place, encased in a radiant light. As it floated toward them, Nimue and Arthur could feel its power pulsing in the air, an energy that resonated with their very beings. The sword landed gently in front of them, its hilt ornate and adorned with runes that sparkled like stars. Nimue stepped forward, heart racing, her hand reaching out to grasp the hilt. Together, she whispered, glancing at Arthur that he nodded, placing his hand over hers. As they both gripped the sword, a surge of magic coursed through them, illuminating the chamber with blinding light. The sword hummed with ancient power, recognizing the bond between them. The guardian watched, satisfaction in its eyes. "You have forged a connection with the sword. It will respond to your hearts, guiding you on your journey." As the light faded, Nimue and Arthur stood before the sword, its power thrumming beneath their hands. They felt a sense of purpose enveloping them, a shared destiny that intertwined their fates. "We need to be ready," Arthur said, determination shining in his eyes. "Morwenna won't stop until she gets what she wants." Nimue nodded, a fire igniting within her. "We'll face her together. With this sword, we have a chance to protect what we love." Together, they lifted the sword, its weight feeling right in their hands. As they stepped away from the altar, the guardian spoke once more, its voice echoing in the chamber. "Your true journey begins now. The path ahead will be fraught with challenges, but remember, the strength of your bond will guide you." With newfound resolve, Nimue and Arthur exited the temple, the sword gleaming in the light of day. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious, but the battle was far from over. The world outside awaited them, dark forces gathering, and it was up to them to protect their future. With the sword now in their possession, Nimue and Arthur felt a renewed sense of purpose as they made their way through the forest. The whispers of the ancient temple echoed in their minds, reminding them of the power they held and the darkness they must confront. Yet, as they walked, an undercurrent of tension began to swirl between them, an unspoken uncertainty that hung heavy in the air. "Do you think we can truly defeat Morwenna?" Arthur asked, his brow furrowing as he stared at the path ahead. "She's powerful, and she knows we're after the sword." Nimue glanced at him, sensing the doubt creeping into his voice. We have to believe we can. Together, we're stronger than we were alone. The sword is a key to our success. Arthur nodded, but the shadow of uncertainty lingered in his eyes. I know. It's just, the weight of this quest is heavier than I expected. As they pressed on, the forest began to shift around them, the trees growing thicker and more twisted. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, and a sense of foreboding settled in their chests. They were not alone, the feeling of being watched was palpable. Just as they reached a clearing, Nimue stopped abruptly. Do you hear that? A faint rustling sounded nearby, followed by hushed whispers. Nimue and Arthur exchanged wary glances, and before they could react, a figure stepped into the clearing, a tall, hooded man whose features were obscured by shadows. Who are you? Arthur demanded, instinctively stepping in front of Nimue, dagger drawn. The man chuckled softly, pulling back his hood to reveal a familiar face, Ronan, a childhood friend of Arthur's and a skilled archer. Relax, it's just me, he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. I'm not here to fight. Nobody told us you were coming, Nimue said, confusion flooding her thoughts. What are you doing here, Ronan? I've been following you, he replied, a glint of something unreadable in his eyes. I heard you found the sword, and I wanted to help. Arthur narrowed his gaze, distrust creeping in. Why should we believe you? The last time we saw you, you were leaving the village without a word. Ronan's expression hardened. You think I wanted to abandon you? There were reasons. He hesitated, glancing at the sword in Nimue's grasp. I want to prove myself. You need allies, and I can help you against Morwenna. Nimue felt the weight of the sword grow heavier in her grip. We can't trust anyone blindly, especially not someone who left when things got tough, she said, her voice firm. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, Ronan shot back, frustration seeping into his tone. But the truth is, I know things. I overheard Morwenna's plans, and I can help you stop her. Arthur exchanged a glance with Nimue, a flicker of indecision passing between them. The forest felt charged with tension, and the air grew thick as they weighed their options. Tell us what you know, Nimue said finally, lowering her guard just slightly. But if we find out you're lying, I won't lie, Ronan interrupted, his voice earnest. I swear. Morwenna is gathering a force, and she's more determined than ever to reclaim the sword. If we don't act fast, she'll unleash a darkness upon the realm that we won't be able to stop. Nimue and Arthur listened intently as Ronan shared what he had overheard, a plot that involved dark alliances and the awakening of ancient spirits that could tip the balance in Morwenna's favor. We need to confront her before she gathers more power, he urged, urgency in his voice. But we'll need to move quickly. She's already sent scouts out looking for you. A heavy silence settled over the clearing as the gravity of the situation sank in. Nimue felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. They needed every ounce of strength they could muster. Fine, Arthur said at last, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his heart. We'll give you a chance to prove yourself. But understand this, if you betray us again, I won't hesitate to end it. Ronan nodded, the tension in his posture easing slightly. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Together, we can defeat her. With their new alliance formed, they began strategizing their next move. But as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Nimue couldn't shake the unease growing in her gut. Trusting Ronan felt like a gamble, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they set off deeper into the forest, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, and shadows clung to the edges of their path, whispering secrets that sent shivers down her spine. "What's wrong?" Arthur asked, noticing her hesitation. Nimue forced a smile, but her heart raced with doubt. "Nothing. Just, keep an eye out. We need to stay alert." The trio continued onward, Ronan guiding them toward a hidden path that led to a series of caves where Morwenna's forces were rumored to be gathering. The further they traveled, the more Nimue felt the weight of their choices pressing upon her. Suddenly, they halted as a flicker of movement caught her eye. From the shadows emerged several figures cloaked in darkness, scouts from Morwenna's camp, moving swiftly and silently. "Run!" Nimue shouted, adrenaline surging as she prepared to summon her magic, but before they could react, Ronan moved with uncanny speed, drawing a hidden dagger from his belt. He lunged toward the nearest scout, catching them by surprise. A fierce struggle ensued, and Nimue's heart raced as she realized they were outnumbered. "Stay close!" Arthur shouted, slashing at another scout as Nimue unleashed a burst of magic, scattering the shadows around them. In the chaos, Ronan fought valiantly, but his movements were erratic. A glance between them revealed a flicker of hesitation. Was he truly on their side? The doubt gnawed at Nimue, and as another scout fell, she felt a chill settle in her bones. As they fought their way through the scouts, Ronan's actions became increasingly erratic, his focus wavering. He appeared torn between helping them and something deeper within himself. In the midst of the fray, Nimue caught a glimpse of a shadow darting behind a tree. A dark figure stood watching, its eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Morwenna had sent her forces not just to capture them, but to test Ronan's loyalty. Suddenly, with a swift motion, Ronan turned on them, dagger glinting in the fading light. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips before he lunged toward Nimue. "No!" Arthur shouted, rushing to intervene, but it was too late. Ronan's dagger slashed through the air, aimed directly at Nimue's heart. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Nimue's instincts kicked in, and she summoned her magic in a desperate surge. A barrier of light sprang up between them, absorbing the impact of the blow. "Ronan, why?" Nimue cried, hurt and betrayal lacing her voice. "You were supposed to help us." The dagger clattered to the ground, and Ronan staggered back, confusion and pain flickering across his face. I didn't mean to." "It was the shadows, enough." Arthur bellowed, standing firm beside Nimue, his expression fierce. "You chose your side, Ronan. And it's not with us." As the last of Morwenna's scouts fell, the clearing fell silent, tension hanging thick in the air. Ronan's betrayal hung heavily between them, and Nimue's heart ached with the reality of the moment. "I tried to warn you," Ronan said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I thought I could do this. But the shadows, they whispered to me. They promised power, safety. I was afraid." Nimue felt her heart harden. You put your own fear above our trust. You've betrayed us at the worst moment. Please, I can still help. Ronan pleaded, eyes wide. I can gather information, I can. No, Arthur interrupted, his voice resolute. We can't trust you again. You've shown us who you truly are. Nimue took a step back, shaking her head in disappointment. You made your choice, Ronan. And now you'll have to live with it. As they turned to leave, the shadows around Ronan began to shift and swirl, as if waiting for his command. With a defeated sigh, he sank to his knees, the weight of his choices crashing down upon him. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice breaking. But it was too late. Nimue and Arthur moved forward, determination guiding their steps. They had faced darkness together, and they would not let betrayal turn them back now that as they made their way deeper into the forest, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across their path. But amid the uncertainty, one thing was clear: they would confront Morwenna and the darkness she wielded, and they would do it together, stronger than ever before. As Nimue and Arthur forged ahead, the weight of Ronan's betrayal hung heavily in the air, the echoes of his desperate pleas still resonating in their minds. They moved with purpose but felt the sharp sting of doubt creeping into their hearts. Do you think we made the right choice? Arthur asked, his voice low as they navigated the twisted roots and shadows of the forest. Nimue glanced at him, feeling the shared burden of their decisions. I believe we did. Trust is everything in this fight, and Ronan showed us he couldn't be trusted. Still, it's hard, Arthur admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. We need all the allies we can get against Morwenna. But how can we be sure anyone else will stand with us after this? Nimue paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. We have to focus on the ones who believe in our cause. We have to rally the people, show them that we stand for something greater than ourselves. As they moved deeper into the heart of the forest, a renewed determination filled her. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger. Now, they needed to inspire others to do the same. We need to reach the village, Nimue said, her voice firm. We have to gather our allies and make them understand the danger we're facing. They need to know that unity is our only hope. Arthur nodded, the spark of resolve igniting in his eyes. You're right. If we can rally the villagers and convince them to stand with us, we can build a force strong enough to confront Morwenna. As they emerged from the shadows of the forest, the familiar sights of the village came into view, but they were greeted not with cheers and smiles but with an unsettling silence. The villagers moved about with their heads down, worry etched into their faces, the air thick with fear. Nimue felt her heart sink. We need to act quickly. They need hope. Together, they made their way to the village square, where the remnants of their once vibrant community lay. A few villagers lingered, their expressions grave as they exchanged hushed whispers. When they spotted Nimue and Arthur, eyes widened in surprise. Look! It's Nimue, one of the villagers called out, a flicker of recognition breaking through the gloom. Gather everyone. Arthur shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. We need to talk. As more villagers trickled into the square, a sense of unease filled the air. Nimue stepped forward, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. Thank you for coming. We know that times are tough, and fear is heavy on your hearts. But we need to stand together now more than ever. A murmur spread through the crowd, doubt lingering in the air. "What can we do?" an older woman asked, her voice shaking. "Morwenna's forces are growing stronger. We're just simple folk." Nimue felt a surge of emotion. This was her home, and she couldn't let fear win. "We are more than just simple folk. Each of you has strength within you, strength that can stand against the darkness. We have a powerful weapon, the sword of legends, and with it, we can defend our homes and our families." "But we're outnumbered," another villager interjected, skepticism evident in his voice. "What hope do we have?" Arthur stepped forward, his voice steady. "Hope comes from unity. Together, we can face whatever Morwenna throws at us. If we stand apart, we will fall. But if we join forces, we can become a beacon of light against her darkness." Nimue nodded, feeling the energy in the square shift as she spoke from the heart. "You have fought for your families, your land, and your loved ones. It's time to fight for each other. This darkness seeks to divide us, but we can choose to unite. We can choose to rise." The crowd began to murmur, uncertainty still lingering but now mixed with a growing sense of hope. Nimue glanced at Arthur, who stood strong beside her, their bond giving her courage. "Remember the stories of our ancestors," Arthur continued, his voice rising. "They faced great challenges and forged a united front against the odds. We are the descendants of those heroes. We have the same strength within us." Slowly, heads began to nod, determination flickering to life. Nimue felt a spark of hope ignite within her. "We can train together, share our skills, and prepare for what lies ahead. If we face Morwenna together, we stand a chance." A chorus of voices began to rise, rallying around the idea of unity. "We will stand with you," a villager called out, followed by another, "Yes. We can fight back." The energy in the square shifted, turning into a swell of determination. Nimue felt her heart lift as she saw fear giving way to resolve, doubt transforming into courage. "Let's gather what we have, our tools, our skills, our hearts." Nimue shouted, her spirit soaring as the villagers began to rally together. "Together, we can train and prepare for the coming storm. Together, we can become a force to be reckoned with." As the villagers began to disperse, buzzing with renewed energy and purpose, Nimue and Arthur exchanged a glance, relief washing over them. "We did it," Arthur said, a smile breaking across his face. Nimue nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "We showed them that they're not alone." But as the villagers began their preparations, a dark thought flickered in Nimue's mind. "We still need to be cautious. Morwenna will notice our unity, and she won't take it lightly." "Then we'll prepare for her," Arthur replied, his expression resolute. "We'll train harder and faster. We will show her that the light of unity cannot be extinguished." With their hearts aligned and their purpose clear, they began to plan, knowing that the battle ahead would be their greatest challenge yet. Together, they would face the darkness and fight for their unity, for their home, and for the hope that still burned brightly within them. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an orange glow over the village as the air buzzed with excitement and determination. Word of Nimue and Arthur's rallying call spread quickly, and allies from nearby realms began to arrive, drawn by the promise of unity against Morwenna's impending darkness. As Nimue stood in the village square, she could hardly contain her excitement. People from different backgrounds and walks of life mingled, their faces filled with resolve. The square, once a place of fear, transformed into a hub of hope and purpose. "Look!" Arthur called out, pointing to a group approaching from the east. "It's the warriors from Eldoria." The Eldorian warriors marched with a fierce grace, clad in shimmering armor that glinted in the fading sunlight. Their leader, a tall woman with flowing silver hair, stepped forward. "We've heard of your plight and come to lend our strength," she said, her voice resonating with authority. "I am Alara, commander of the Eldorian Guard." Nimue stepped forward, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for coming. We need all the strength we can gather. Morwenna's forces are growing." As Alara surveyed the crowd, her sharp eyes narrowed with determination. "We will stand with you, but we must devise a plan. We need to strike swiftly and effectively." More allies continued to arrive throughout the day, warriors, archers, mages, and craftsmen from neighboring realms. Each brought unique skills and knowledge, and soon the square was alive with the energy of collaboration. Nimue, Arthur, and Alara gathered a small group of leaders from the various factions to strategize. They convened in a large tent set up at the edge of the village, the air thick with anticipation. "We need to understand Morwenna's strengths and weaknesses," Alara said, pacing the room. "We know she is powerful, but her forces may also have vulnerabilities we can exploit." A young mage from the north, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, spoke up. "I've studied her previous attacks. She often relies on fear to manipulate her enemies. If we can neutralize that fear, we can weaken her grip on her forces." Nimue nodded, encouraged by the input. "We must also focus on bolstering our defenses. We can create protective wards around the village to shield it from her dark magic." "Agreed," Arthur said, leaning forward. "And we'll need to train everyone in combat. We have to ensure that even those without experience can fight effectively." The group spent hours brainstorming strategies, dividing tasks, and preparing for the challenges ahead. Plans began to take shape, each ally contributing their skills and insights, the camaraderie growing stronger with each passing moment. As night fell, a crackling fire lit the tent, illuminating their determined faces. They discussed logistics, reinforcing the village's perimeter, and the best times to strike against Morwenna's forces. Finally, a hushed silence fell over the gathering. Nimue took a deep breath, feeling the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders. "This isn't just about fighting Morwenna. It's about protecting our way of life, our homes, and the people we love. We must show them that we stand united." The crowd murmured their agreement, voices rising with determination. Alara raised her hand, calling for quiet. "We must also send scouts to gather more information about Morwenna's movements. Knowledge is our greatest weapon." "I'll lead a team," volunteered a fierce warrior from Eldoria, his chest puffed with pride. "We'll slip through the shadows and gather intel. With each plan solidified, the fire flickered with renewed energy, reflecting the burning resolve in their hearts. They began to form smaller groups, each tasked with specific roles, from gathering supplies to preparing the village for the coming battle. As the meeting drew to a close, Nimue felt a surge of hope. They were no longer alone in this fight. Allies stood shoulder to shoulder, each determined to protect their realms. Outside the tent, the night sky shimmered with stars, a vast expanse that seemed to promise strength and unity. Yet, deep within her, a nagging sense of unease remained. "Arthur," she murmured, stepping away from the gathering. "What if Morwenna discovers our plans?" He joined her, his expression thoughtful. "Then we must be prepared to act swiftly. We can't allow fear to dictate our actions." Nimue nodded, but the thought of Ronan's betrayal lingered in her mind, a reminder that even within unity, darkness could seep in. "Trust in our allies," Arthur said, sensing her unease. "We'll face whatever comes together." As they returned to the gathering, the atmosphere crackled with purpose, determination palpable in the air. Nimue knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. The storm was gathering, but they would face it united, and together, they would fight for their future. The time for action was drawing near, and as dawn approached, so too did the promise of battle, a battle for unity, for strength, and for the world they fought to protect. The dawn broke with an ominous hush, the world holding its breath in anticipation of the clash to come. Nimue stood at the entrance of the ancient temple, the air thick with tension. The stone structure loomed before them, majestic yet foreboding, its once gleaming facade now darkened by the shadows of impending conflict. All around her, allies gathered, warriors from Eldoria, archers from the north, mages from distant realms, each preparing for the battle that would determine their fates. The chants of the villagers echoed in her mind, a mix of hope and anxiety that fueled her resolve. "Are you ready?" Arthur asked, stepping up beside her, his expression a mix of determination and concern. Nimue took a deep breath, centering herself. "As ready as we'll ever be. We must remember our purpose, to protect our home and each other." As the last rays of the sun illuminated the temple, the air crackled with magic. Nimue could feel the sword's presence, an ancient energy pulsing from within the stone walls, calling to her. But alongside that pull was a weight of responsibility, a reminder that this battle was not just for them but for all who sought to stand against Morwenna. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and from the shadows emerged Morwenna's forces, dark figures cloaked in malice. The air shifted, filled with whispers of fear and anger. The time for words had passed, now was the moment for action. "Form up!" Arthur shouted, his voice cutting through the tension as he took his place at the front, determination etched on his face. "We fight together." Nimue moved to his side, heart racing as she drew upon her magic, feeling the warmth of the sword's power coursing through her veins. As the first wave of Morwenna's soldiers charged, the allies responded in unison, archers releasing their arrows like rain, and warriors clashing swords against steel. Nimue wove through the chaos, her magic igniting with every incantation. Energy surged from her fingertips, casting protective barriers around her friends and blasting away their enemies. She felt the bond between her and Arthur strengthening, their movements synchronized as they fought back to back against the encroaching darkness, but as the battle raged on, Morwenna's forces continued to swell. They fought fiercely, driven by the promise of power and dominance. The temple loomed overhead, a silent witness to the chaos unfolding beneath its ancient stones. "Arthur!" Nimue shouted, spotting a group of shadowy figures converging on him. "To your left!" With a swift move, he dispatched one of the attackers, but the relentless tide pressed on, each clash of metal ringing with desperation. In the heart of the battle, Nimue felt her energy beginning to wane, exhaustion creeping in. Suddenly, a chilling laugh echoed from the shadows, and Morwenna herself emerged, her presence dark and overwhelming. "Fools! You think you can protect what is mine?" she taunted, her eyes glinting with malice as she raised her hands, summoning dark tendrils of magic that snaked toward the warriors. Nimue's heart raced as she met Morwenna's gaze, feeling the weight of her power. "We won't let you take the sword." With a flick of her wrist, Morwenna unleashed a wave of dark energy that sent allies sprawling, fear creeping into their hearts. "You are but children playing with forces you cannot comprehend," she hissed, drawing upon her own magic. Nimue pushed back against the darkness, her voice steady. "We may be young, but we fight for a cause greater than ourselves." Arthur stepped forward, rallying their allies. "Together. Focus your magic. We can't let her divide us." As the warriors joined forces, a bright light began to coalesce around Nimue and Arthur, illuminating the space between them. The sword, hidden within the temple, thrummed with energy, responding to their call for unity. "Let's go!" Arthur shouted, moving toward the temple entrance. "We need to get to the sword." The two of them broke through the ranks, sprinting toward the temple's entrance as Morwenna's laughter echoed behind them, cold and mocking. "You think you can claim what is rightfully mine? I will not allow it." As they entered the temple, the air shimmered with ancient power. The walls were etched with runes that glowed in response to their presence, guiding them toward the center chamber where the sword rested. Nimue's heart raced as they approached the pedestal that held the sword. Its blade gleamed like liquid silver, radiating a warmth that banished the shadows. But before they could reach it, a barrier of dark magic surged up, trapping them within the chamber. Morwenna appeared at the entrance, her eyes burning with fury. "You think you can wield the sword? You are unworthy." Nimue stepped forward, determination blazing in her chest. "You underestimate the strength of those who fight for love and unity. The sword belongs to us." In that moment, the runes around the chamber pulsed with energy, resonating with Nimue's magic. She reached out, feeling the sword's power calling to her. With a surge of will, she focused her energy on breaking through the dark barrier. "Arthur, now!" she shouted, feeling the connection between them grow stronger. Together, they unleashed a wave of magic that collided with Morwenna's barrier, the force shaking the very foundations of the temple. As the two powers clashed, the sword began to glow brighter, its essence intertwining with their magic. The barrier shattered, and the temple erupted in light, sending tendrils of energy spiraling outward. "No!" Morwenna screamed, her form flickering as the light pushed against her dark magic. "You will pay for this." But in that moment, the sword surged to life, its blade singing in harmony with Nimue's heart. She reached out, grasping the hilt, feeling the power flow through her like a river of light. With a powerful thrust, she raised the sword, directing its energy toward Morwenna. The dark sorceress staggered back, the light engulfing her, and for the first time, doubt crossed her features. "What is this power?" she hissed, her confidence wavering as the sword's magic enveloped her. "It's the power of unity," Nimue cried, channeling every ounce of strength and hope into the sword. "It's the strength of those who believe in each other." With a final surge of energy, the light erupted, consuming Morwenna in its brilliance. The darkness that had threatened to consume them all flickered and dissipated, leaving only the remnants of her power fading into the air. The light subsided, the temple fell silent, the echoes of battle replaced by the soft sound of their breathing. Nimue stood there, the sword held high, its glow illuminating the chamber. Arthur stepped beside her, awe in his eyes. "You did it, Nimue. We did it." But as the adrenaline faded, a heaviness settled in her chest. "What does this mean for us?" she whispered, looking down at the sword. "What will happen now?" As if in response, the sword began to hum softly, its magic resonating with her emotions. The true nature of the sword revealed itself, not just a weapon, but a symbol of hope, unity, and the strength of those who fought for a brighter future. "We'll use it to protect our realm," Arthur said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Together, we'll forge a new path, one built on the bonds we've created." Nimue nodded, a sense of peace washing over her. The battle for the sword had not only secured their victory against Morwenna, but had also solidified their resolve to stand united against any darkness that threatened their world. As they left the temple, the sun rose higher in the sky, casting warm rays of light over the village. They stepped out into a new dawn, the promise of hope shimmering on the horizon. Together, they would face whatever came next, armed with the strength of their unity and the magic of the sword they had claimed. The aftermath of the battle echoed in the quiet that settled over the village. As the sun climbed higher, its rays illuminated the charred remains of the conflict, but it also revealed the hope that blossomed anew. The villagers began to rebuild, aided by their newfound allies, but amid the rebuilding, a heavy tension lingered. Arthur stood at the edge of the village, gazing at the sword as it rested in the clearing. Its blade shimmered with an ethereal light, a symbol of their hard-won victory and the burden of what lay ahead. Nimue approached him, sensing the weight of his thoughts. "Hey," she said softly, her voice cutting through the silence. "You okay?" He turned to her, his expression a mix of determination and doubt. "I'm not sure. The sword, it feels powerful, but I can't shake the feeling that it comes with a cost." Nimue stepped closer, feeling the tension radiate from him. "It does have great power, but it's also a choice. It's meant to protect, to unite. It's not just a weapon, it embodies the hope we fought for." "I know that," Arthur replied, running a hand through his hair. "But what if I'm not worthy of wielding it? What if it leads to more destruction?" Nimue understood the struggle within him. "You're not alone in this. We've faced darkness together, and it's your heart that guides you. Remember, the sword chose us because we fought for something greater than ourselves." He took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling in. "But what if I misuse it? What if I become like Morwenna? Nimue shook her head, stepping closer to him, her voice steady. You're not her. You've shown compassion, strength, and the ability to unite people. That's what makes you worthy. It's not the sword that defines you, Arthur, it's your choices. As she spoke, a flicker of understanding crossed his face. But how do I know what choice to make? This power could change everything. Every choice we make shapes our path, Nimue replied, her eyes searching his. The sword amplifies your intentions. If you wield it with love, with the desire to protect, it will bring light. But if you let fear or ambition guide you, then yes, it could lead to destruction. Arthur nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. So it's about balance. I need to stay true to who I am and what I believe in. Exactly, Nimue encouraged, feeling a surge of hope. Remember our allies. We're not fighting alone. You have us to help you navigate this power. He turned to the sword, its brilliance reflecting in his eyes. What if I lead them to a greater cause? What if I can be a beacon of hope, just as you said? Nimue felt a spark of inspiration ignite within her. Yes. You can be that leader. You've already begun to rally people behind you. The sword can be a symbol of that unity, a reminder that together, we can face anything. Arthur took a deep breath, visibly steadied by her words. I want to protect them, Nimue. I want to ensure that no one experiences the fear we've faced again. That's the spirit, she replied, her heart swelling with admiration for him. You're capable of so much. Trust in your heart and the choices you make. He stepped forward, reaching out to grasp the hilt of the sword, its warmth radiating through him. With a firm resolve, he lifted it, feeling its power surge in response. I will use this to protect our home and our people. I'll be the leader they need, not out of fear, but out of love and unity. Nimue beamed at him, pride flooding her heart. You're going to be amazing, Arthur. Together, we'll guide them into a brighter future. As they stood side by side, the sword gleaming between them, a deep sense of purpose enveloped them. The weight of responsibility shifted into something more profound, an opportunity to create change and protect the light they had fought so hard to preserve. Let's go, Arthur said, his voice filled with renewed confidence. We need to gather everyone and share our vision. As they walked back toward the village, a sense of unity hung in the air, the promise of hope shining brightly in their hearts. Together, they would navigate the power of choice, leading their people toward a future built on strength, love, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship. Nimue felt a surge of anticipation as they approached the gathering crowd. This was just the beginning. With Arthur at the helm and her by his side, they would forge a new path, one that embraced the power of choice and the strength that came from standing together. The atmosphere in the village was electric with hope, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of anxiety. The promise of unity and a brighter future felt fragile, a delicate thread in the face of the challenges still to come. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Nimue and Arthur stood at the forefront, ready to share their vision for the future. We stand at a crossroads, Arthur began, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled crowd. Together, we have faced darkness, and together, we will light the way forward. The sword is not just a weapon, it's a symbol of our unity and our determination to protect what we hold dear. As cheers erupted from the crowd, a sense of pride swelled in Nimue's heart. They were ready, but a shadow loomed on the horizon, a reminder that their victory had come at a cost. Days turned into weeks as the villagers rebuilt and trained, yet a lingering tension hung in the air. Rumors of Morwenna's remaining forces began to circulate, and with them came a sense of urgency. It was not long before they were faced with their first significant challenge since the battle at the Temple Point. One crisp morning, a scout returned breathless, panic etched across his face. Morwenna's forces are gathering again, larger than before. They plan to strike at dawn. The news hit like a cold wave, freezing the excitement that had been building. Arthur and Nimue exchanged worried glances, knowing the gravity of the situation. "We must prepare," Arthur said, rallying their allies. "Everyone needs to be ready to fight." As night fell, the village buzzed with activity, warriors sharpening weapons, mages casting protective wards, and villagers gathering supplies. The air was thick with tension, the reality of impending danger sinking in. Nimue stood on a hill overlooking the village, the sword glinting at her side. The weight of their situation pressed down on her. "What if we're not ready for this?" she whispered to herself, uncertainty creeping into her heart. Arthur joined her, sensing her turmoil. "We've trained hard. We'll face them together." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "But what if someone gets hurt?" Arthur's expression softened. "We're all willing to fight for each other. That's what makes us strong. But we also need to be ready for sacrifice. Sometimes, it's a part of the fight." As dawn broke, casting a muted light over the horizon, the sound of drums echoed through the village, signaling the approach of Morwenna's forces. The villagers took their positions, hearts pounding with fear and resolve. The clash began with a ferocity that took Nimue's breath away. The battlefield was chaos, shouts of battle, the clash of steel, and the crackle of magic filled the air. Nimue and Arthur fought side by side, the sword guiding their every move, its power thrumming in resonance with their hearts. But as the battle raged on, something felt off. Nimue caught glimpses of familiar faces, friends she had fought beside, pushed forward by a shared sense of purpose. Yet, in the midst of that unity, a fear gnawed at her. Then it happened, a devastating moment that would change everything. In a surge of dark magic, Morwenna's forces unleashed a powerful attack, a wave of energy that swept across the battlefield. Nimue's heart dropped as she watched one of their bravest allies, a young warrior named Kale, step forward to protect his friends. He took the brunt of the attack, his body engulfed in dark energy, collapsing to the ground in a lifeless heap. "No!" Arthur shouted, horror etched on his face as he rushed toward Kale. Nimue felt her heart shatter at the sight. The reality of loss hit her like a physical blow, an ache that settled deep in her chest. The fight continued around them, but time seemed to freeze as they reached Kale's side. Nimue knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she felt for a pulse that was no longer there. "He sacrificed himself for us," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Arthur's jaw clenched as he looked around at their allies fighting valiantly. "This can't be for nothing," he said, fury igniting within him. "We must honor him by fighting back." Nimue nodded, swallowing her grief. "You're right. He fought for our unity. We can't let his sacrifice be in vain." Fueled by sorrow and resolve, they returned to the battle, their hearts heavy but their spirits unyielding. The sword glowed brighter than ever, resonating with their pain and determination. They fought fiercely, rallying their allies, pushing back against the darkness. As the dust settled and Morwenna's forces began to falter, Nimue felt the truth of their situation dawn on her. Sacrifice was part of their fight, not just for power, but for the love and bonds that tied them together. Every blow they struck, every moment they fought, was infused with the memories of those who had fallen. When the battle finally ended, the remnants of Morwenna's forces scattered, the victorious allies stood in a somber silence. They had won, but the cost weighed heavily upon them. Nimue turned to Arthur, her heart aching for Cale and the others they had lost. "We need to remember them. This fight isn't just about power, it's about the sacrifices made for those we love." He nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "We will honor Cale and all our fallen. We'll build a future that reflects their bravery and the unity we fought for." As they looked out over the battlefield, the sun began to rise once more, casting a golden light over the scars left by war. In that moment of profound loss, they found a renewed understanding of their power, a power rooted in love, sacrifice, and the promise of redemption. Together, they would forge a path forward, honoring those who had fought and fallen, determined to create a future where sacrifice would not be in vain. With the weight of the sword in her hands, Nimue felt the warmth of their bonds, knowing that together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by the choices they would make. The battlefield was a haunting reminder of the price they had paid for victory. As the sun rose higher, it illuminated the remnants of the fight, fallen warriors, scattered weapons, and the emotional weight that hung thick in the air. Despite their triumph over Morwenna's forces, the loss of Cale and others loomed large in the hearts of the villagers. Nimue stood amidst the aftermath, her gaze sweeping over the scene. Each face she recognized carried a different story of bravery and sacrifice, and as she knelt to honor Cale's memory, she felt the collective sorrow and strength of their community pressing around her. "Cale was a true hero," she whispered, laying a hand on the earth where he had fallen. "He gave everything for us. We must ensure his sacrifice was not in vain." Arthur joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We will build a legacy that honors him and all who fought. The sword is a symbol of our unity, but it must also remind us of our duty to protect and cherish one another." They stood in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their shared grief settle. Around them, villagers began to gather, paying their respects to the fallen and helping one another find solace in the shared pain. As the day wore on, the villagers began to rebuild not only their homes but also their spirits. They gathered together in the village square, and Arthur took center stage, the sword gleaming at his side, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. "We stand here today not just as warriors but as a family," he began, his voice strong. "We have lost much, but we have also gained a bond that cannot be broken. The legacy of this sword is not merely in its power, but in the love and unity it represents." Nimue watched as he spoke, her heart swelling with admiration. Arthur had grown into a leader who understood the weight of responsibility, and in that moment, she felt their connection deepen. They were two souls intertwined, each carrying the burdens of their past but determined to forge a future together. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly to honor their fallen friends. They erected a monument in the village square, a stone tribute inscribed with the names of those who had given their lives in the fight for unity. Each name was a reminder of the sacrifices made and the love that had ignited their cause. As they sculpted the monument together, their hands brushing against each other, Nimue felt a warmth blossoming in her chest. "This is more than just stone," she said softly, glancing at Arthur. "It's a promise. A promise to protect our home and each other," he replied, meeting her gaze. The intensity of the moment lingered between them, unspoken feelings weaving an invisible thread of connection. With the monument complete, they gathered the villagers for a ceremony to honor the fallen. Underneath the clear sky, they lit candles and shared stories of bravery and laughter, allowing the spirits of their friends to live on in their hearts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Arthur took Nimue's hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll carry their legacy forward," he said, his voice a steady anchor amidst the emotions swirling around them. "And we'll do it together." Nimue felt a rush of warmth at his words. "Together," she echoed, her heart pounding in rhythm with the promise they had made. Their bond had transformed through the trials they had faced, growing stronger with each challenge they overcame. In the weeks that followed, as they resumed their training and began to prepare for any future threats, the sword became a symbol of their resolve. They learned to harness its magic not just for battle, but for healing and unity. Nimue felt a deep connection to the sword and to Arthur, each day solidifying their partnership and shared purpose. One evening, as they practiced under the twilight sky, Arthur turned to her, his expression serious yet filled with warmth. "Nimue, I want you to know that I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your strength and wisdom guide me." She met his gaze, her heart swelling with affection. "And I wouldn't be who I am without you, Arthur. You've shown me what true leadership means. Together, we've created something beautiful from our pain." As they stood together, a gentle breeze rustling through the trees, Nimue felt a shift within her, a profound realization that their journey was not just about the sword or their battles, but about the legacy they were building together. Their bond was a testament to the strength they had found in each other, and in that connection lay the true magic of their fight. With the sword at their side and the spirits of their friends watching over them, they were ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Together, they would carry the legacy of the sword and the memories of those they had lost into a future filled with hope, love, and an unbreakable bond. The morning sun spilled golden light across the landscape as Nimue and Arthur returned to her village, a palpable sense of change surrounding them. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of fresh earth and the promise of new beginnings. Though the scars of their recent battles lingered, a sense of hope threaded through the villagers as they worked together to rebuild. Nimue felt a deep sense of purpose as she stepped into the familiar streets. The village was alive with activity, children laughed while helping their parents, and warriors shared stories of their courage. But what resonated most deeply within her was the wisdom she had gained on their journey, the understanding that unity was their greatest strength, and that love and sacrifice intertwined in a way that defined their futures. "Look," Arthur said, nudging her gently as they walked through the village. "Everyone is coming together. They've rebuilt so much already." Nimue smiled, watching the camaraderie unfold before her. "It's incredible. This village has always been strong, but now they have a renewed spirit." As they reached the village square, the monument they had erected stood tall, a testament to the bravery of those who had fought and fallen. Villagers gathered around, paying their respects, and Nimue felt the warmth of their gratitude envelop her. She stepped forward, ready to share her vision for their future. "Friends," she called out, her voice steady. "Today, we stand not just as survivors but as a family united in purpose. The battles we have faced have forged bonds that cannot be broken, and together, we can build a brighter tomorrow." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Arthur stepped beside her, his presence a steady anchor. "Our victories have come at a cost, but they have also shown us what we are capable of. We will honor the memory of our fallen by ensuring our village thrives." As they spoke, Nimue felt the pulse of hope resonating through the villagers. Their hearts beat as one, a symphony of strength and determination. She glanced at Arthur, the sunlight catching the glint of the sword at his side, a symbol of their journey and the path he was destined to walk. After the gathering, Arthur pulled Nimue aside, a hint of seriousness in his expression. "Nimue, I've been thinking. The battles we fought were not just for this village. We have a larger responsibility now." "What do you mean?" she asked, sensing the weight of his words. "I want to unite the realms. The vision we shared, the legacy we've built, it needs to extend beyond these borders. I need to take the first steps toward kingship, not just as a ruler, but as a leader who embodies our values of love, sacrifice, and unity." Nimue's heart swelled with admiration and pride. "You're ready for this, Arthur. You've already proven your worth. But it won't be easy. You'll face challenges and opposition." He nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I understand that. But with you by my side, I believe we can make a difference. Together, we can bring the realms together under a banner of hope." The weight of his words settled over her, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling within. "And how do you plan to begin?" "I want to gather allies from neighboring villages and kingdoms, share our story, and inspire others to join our cause. But I need your guidance, your insight. You understand magic and the hearts of the people in a way I don't." Nimue took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of their path ahead. "I will help you. We'll visit the villages, speak to their leaders, and show them what unity can accomplish. But remember, this journey will test us in ways we cannot foresee." "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "But I'm ready. We've faced darkness together, now we can bring light to others." As they stood together in the sunlight, Nimue felt a sense of clarity wash over her. The dawn of a new era was breaking, and they would be at the forefront of it, guiding their people with the lessons learned from their struggles. Their bond had solidified through sacrifice, and now it would guide them forward. "Let's begin," Nimue said, her voice filled with resolve. "We'll take this journey together, one village at a time." As they prepared to leave, a group of villagers approached, their faces lit with hope and admiration. They were eager to follow Arthur's lead, ready to join him in his quest to unite the realms. With every step they took, the weight of the past transformed into a tapestry of possibilities. As they set out, Nimue felt the world shifting beneath their feet, a new dawn was breaking, and with it came the promise of a future where love and unity would prevail. Together, they would weave their legacy into the fabric of the realms, forging connections that would last beyond their lifetimes. With Arthur at her side and a purpose guiding them, they embraced the journey ahead, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, united by the power of choice, the strength of their bond, and the hope that glimmered like the first light of dawn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and purple, Nimue found herself perched on a familiar rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. The village lay sprawled below, alive with the glow of lanterns and the sounds of laughter, but her mind wandered far beyond its borders. Nimue traced her fingers over the ancient symbols etched into the rock, reminders of her past, of her training, and of the magic that coursed through her veins. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the challenges, the losses, the friendships forged in the fires of battle. Each moment had shaped her, igniting a fire of purpose deep within. The memories flooded back, the whispers of the woods, the prophecy that had first set her on this path, and the trials she had faced alongside Arthur. Their connection had blossomed into something profound, and she felt a sense of gratitude for the lessons learned along the way. But now, as she stood at the precipice of a new chapter, she could not ignore the weight of her responsibilities. She was not just a sorceress, she was a beacon of hope for her village and beyond. The power of the ancient sword still lingered within her, a reminder that the magic she wielded was meant for more than just protection. It was a tool for unity and growth. As she gazed out at the sprawling landscape, she considered the path ahead. Arthur's desire to unite the realms ignited a spark of excitement within her. New adventures beckoned, and she could almost feel the pull of distant lands and untold stories waiting to unfold. But with each step forward came the understanding that she would face new challenges, dangers that would test her resolve and her magic. Nimue closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The air was thick with potential, a promise of change and growth. She envisioned the faces of those they would meet, the hearts they would inspire, and the challenges they would overcome together. There would be allies to forge and enemies to confront, and in every encounter, she would need to draw on the wisdom she had gained. "Hey," Arthur's voice broke through her reverie, warm and reassuring. He joined her at the edge of the outcrop, his gaze following hers as he took in the view. "What's on your mind?" Nimue turned to him, a smile gracing her lips. "Just reflecting on everything we've been through and what lies ahead. It's a lot to process." Arthur nodded, his expression contemplative. "I feel it too. We've built something incredible here, but there's so much more to do. I want to ensure that our vision doesn't end with us." "We will," she affirmed, her confidence swelling. "But it's not just about leading, it's about inspiring others to take up the mantle of responsibility and courage. We can't do it alone." "You're right," he said, a sense of determination igniting in his eyes. "And as we travel to unite the realms, I want you to remember that your role as a sorceress is vital. You have the ability to connect with people on a level that few can. Your magic is not just about power, it's about healing and hope. Nimue felt her heart race at his words, the weight of her journey settling into a sense of purpose. I'll do my best to guide and support those we meet. I want to show them that magic can be a force for good, something that binds us together rather than divides. Together, Arthur echoed, a smile breaking across his face. We'll find new allies, face new challenges, and create a legacy that will last for generations. She felt a swell of excitement as they stood side by side, their futures intertwined. The adventures ahead promised growth and discovery, but with that came the understanding that their bond would be tested. They would need to rely on each other more than ever as they navigated the complexities of leadership and the weight of their destinies. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Nimue took one last glance at the village below, her heart filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. The path ahead was uncharted, but she felt ready to embrace it. Let's make a promise, she said, turning to Arthur. No matter where this journey takes us, we'll always support each other and remember the lessons we've learned. He took her hand, squeezing it gently. I promise. We'll face everything together. With that promise, Nimue felt a surge of hope and determination. The adventures that awaited them would be challenging, but she was ready to embrace her role as a sorceress, a guide, a protector, and a catalyst for change. The world was vast, and with Arthur by her side, they would illuminate the darkness, forging a new path toward unity and strength. Together, they would write the next chapter of their story, one filled with magic, adventure, and the enduring power of their bond. As they turned away from the precipice and made their way back to the village, Nimue felt the weight of possibility settle over her like a warm cloak, ready to embrace whatever came next. The dawn broke with a soft, golden light, bathing the village in a warm glow. Nimue stood at the edge of the village square, her heart heavy yet hopeful as she prepared for the day's departure. Around her, the villagers were busy with their morning routines, their laughter and chatter filling the air. But today felt different, marked by the bittersweet weight of parting. Arthur approached, his expression a mixture of determination and melancholy. He had gathered a small group of warriors and allies, ready to embark on the first leg of his journey to unite the realms. It was a path he had chosen, one that would take him away from Nimue for a time. The thought tugged at her heart, but she knew it was necessary. Are you ready? He asked, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of emotion. Nimue took a deep breath, forcing a smile. As ready as I'll ever be. This is an important step for you, Arthur. For all of us. He nodded, glancing back at the villagers, who were watching with a mixture of pride and sadness. I'll do everything I can to ensure our dream becomes a reality. I want to build a future where our villages can thrive together. And I'll be here, supporting you from home, she promised, her heart swelling with pride for him. I'll continue to hone my magic and share our story. When the time comes, we'll reunite with new allies and even greater strength. Promise me you'll take care of yourself, he said, stepping closer, his eyes searching hers. I need to know you're safe while I'm gone. I promise, she replied, the sincerity of her words filling the air between them. We'll both have our roles to play, and we'll do it well. The moment stretched, their connection palpable in the quiet morning light. Arthur reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, grounding them both in the promise of tomorrow. No matter where we go, or how far apart we may be, our paths are intertwined. You are part of my destiny, Nimue. Her heart fluttered at his words, a warmth blooming within her. And you are part of mine, Arthur. Our friendship and bond are stronger than distance. We'll always find our way back to each other. With a gentle squeeze, Arthur released her hand, and they stepped back, the moment of intimacy lingering in the air. The gathered warriors began to stir, readying themselves for the journey ahead. Go, she urged, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. You're destined for greatness, and I believe in you. He smiled, a glimmer of hope shining in his eyes. And I believe in you, Nimue. Your magic and strength will light the way for others. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for a future. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the village, Arthur turned to join his comrades, his silhouette framed by the rising light. Nimue watched as he moved forward, the weight of their shared dreams resting upon his shoulders. With one last glance over his shoulder, he met her gaze, and in that moment, unspoken words passed between them, a promise that transcended time and distance. As they parted, Nimue felt a bittersweet surge of emotions. The journey ahead for both of them was uncertain, filled with challenges and triumphs yet to come. But she understood now that destiny was not a solitary path, it was a tapestry woven with threads of friendship, love, and magic. Turning back to the village, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was work to be done, stories to be told, and magic to be shared. She would honor their promise by nurturing the bonds within her community, preparing for the day they would reunite with their allies and face whatever challenges lay ahead. With each step she took, Nimue felt the echoes of their shared journey resonate within her, a reminder of the strength they had gained together. She would carry Arthur's spirit with her, along with the dreams of a united future. As she walked through the village, greeting familiar faces and feeling the warmth of her community envelop her, she embraced the magic that thrummed beneath the surface of her being. She was Nimue, the sorceress, a protector and a beacon of hope, ready to forge her own path while waiting for the day their destinies would intertwine once more. And as the sun shone brightly overhead, casting a golden hue across the land, Nimue knew that no matter the distance, the promise of tomorrow was alive in their hearts, waiting to be fulfilled.